Good day, everyone. Good morning, evening, afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Manisha Thomas, and I am with PHAP, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all today to this webinar on embracing the leadership of local actors and communities in climate action. This is the fourth session of the learning stream on climate change and humanitarian action, which is being organized by ICVA and PHAP. And it is my pleasure to introduce my co-facilitator, Nishani, who's going to facilitate with me today. Nishani, over to you.
Hi, Manisha. Thanks so much and welcome. It's great to see all our participants from all over the world joining in for this interesting webinar. We've got a great lineup today. So for this particular webinar, I'm not going to read out what's under Commitment 3 in the Charter, but it would be good to understand and unpack what do we mean when we say embracing local leadership of local actors and communities, and that it's more complicated than just international, or maybe not even complicated. It's more than just international or national and local or regional. It's not just about NGOs. In almost all the contexts we humanitarian organizations are operating, there's already existing community and local structures and ecosystems in place at country level. And some are structured or more organized, and some are more informal or loosely knit. And with the intersection of climate change and localization, as we keep referring to in our humanitarian context, we will need to take into consideration a far wider community than what we are normally used to. When we talk about communities, we're not just talking about refugees, displaced, vulnerable migrant people, but it also means host communities, the wider local populations where climate change is already taking place and where we are operating. We also need to look at local grassroots level organizations, community-based, women's faith-based organizations, whom we don't often reach out to in our designing of programs. Local private sector are very active in many contexts, even where we work in, and they come in all shapes and sizes, including local foundations. Do we interact with them? It's a question to find out. Governments, multi-layered, central, provincial, local governments, parliamentarians, local politicians, municipalities, these are the guys who are essential to decision-making processes. So we need to engage with those. Movements, some are unstructured, semi-structured, more structured. Movements of youth, women, volunteers, LGBTQI are some of those others who are there on the ground at country level. So how can we, as humanitarian organizations, put these considerations into practice? We can ensure that local actors are meaningfully participating and are part of decision-making in humanitarian coordinations platforms, perhaps such as the ISC at global policy level, at the humanitarian country teams, clusters and coordination forums at global level, I meant ISC, but humanitarian country teams, clusters, and coordination forums at country level. By incorporating knowledge of local communities and those affected by climate change and environment risk and response, we need to look at how do we incorporate these into our design, planning, and programming in the humanitarian sector. Donors, UN, and international humanitarian organizations can also do so by increasing and supporting multi-year investments in institutional capacities of local, national, local coalitions, NGO coalitions, and those who are responders who are working in fragile contexts. Another one that we need to think about is collating evidence-based documentation and research that feed into collective advocacy and collective action. We need to start using this knowledge in our advocacy messages and programming and engage better with refugees, youth, and other movements that raise wider awareness that we're not normally linked with. And last but not least, how do we understand better and work to reduce barriers related to access and access to systems? And these most often prevent local and national actors from advancing their leadership and growth. And this is with the main focus on improving the quality of partnerships. So it is quite clear that localization and climate change in humanitarian action are intrinsically linked. We always talk about climate change impacting the most vulnerable populations on the ground. And it has created this amazing opportunity for us in the humanitarian sector to critically examine and improve the overall structure and functionality of the current system in the humanitarian sector. And ways of enabling us to strengthen inclusion of, accountability to, and acceptance by affected people of what we do and how we respond is critical. And it also gives us the opportunity to increase resilience through linking preparedness, response, and recovery efforts in our ways of working. This intersection is also an opportunity to enhance the speed, quality, and scale of humanitarian response, which is definitely going to increase and is increasing due to climate impacts in where we work. It should improve, and it will improve the efficiency and effectiveness of humanitarian action, and it enables us to promote diversity and support innovative and contextual approaches. And the most recent IPCC report on impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability states that climate resilient development involves questions of equity. It particularly refers to low income and marginalized groups, and includes urgent provision of basic services and humanitarian assistance among more mid to long term initiatives and support. And the report goes on to highlight that this will be most successful if everyone is at the table. Peoples, local communities, civil society, including through international cooperation, can advance climate resilience by addressing structural inequalities, insufficient financial resources, risks across contexts, and the integration of indigenous and local knowledge. So a few things that to link the localization and climate change discourse that's going on at policy at different levels is that it's a new way of operating. Localization and climate change has given us an opportunity to look at the new roles, responsibilities, and competencies that are required to make it happen. It's a process not just limited to emergency and protection contexts and situations, but it's also seen as a bridge between humanitarian and development situations and strategies, what we could perhaps call the nexus in practice, if you could say it. The Grand Bargain 2.0, so much of focus on local leadership. But in order to achieve positive change, we need to address these power imbalances and to have local actors well engaged and at the table, and at different dialogues with key institutional donors, member states, and many others, so that in order to better understand what are these administrative impediments, barriers that hold local actors back from moving this agenda forward. And last but not least, community engagement. This is a key dimension related to localization. And we can't really talk about real engagement without focusing on equitable partnerships and more influential involvement of crisis-affected people. We need to transform our ways of working and give the space to local actors and affected communities for decision-making based on their needs and not on our capacities. So we need to focus on addressing structural obstacles associated with localization to enhance national humanitarian leadership. Both international and national actors need to focus our efforts on reducing the structural inequalities that stifle national voices in coordination and leadership platforms. So, and to end, I have spoken about change and action and being at the table, but today we have colleagues from the Refugee Coalition for Climate Action presenting at this webinar. While ICVA and PHAP may have given them a space and a platform to share their expertise with us, Ellie, Gawa, Nifasha, and their colleagues have traveled 2 hours or more to another town so that they could have a better internet connection to do their presentation and to be at the table. So when I said, wow, that's dedication, the simple response from them was, we are committed to making change. And now that is action. Over to you, Manisha.
Thanks very much, Nishani. And I think you've covered a broad range of issues that are covered under this webinar today. It's a big, long list of things that may get covered today. So If we don't get to all of them, let's not be disappointed, but I think it's great that you've made those links to the broader conversations that we're having in the humanitarian community. Before I turn back to our Mentimeter, and I encourage all of you to take that poll, let me introduce our panelists. As Nishani just said, some have traveled quite far to make sure that they can be joining us today. So thank you for that. We have 4 speakers today. First, we're going to have Elijah Malumba, who is Program Manager for Candlelight for Environment, Education, and Health, who is going to speak about how they are integrating climate and environmental preservation in their work in Somaliland. Next, we're going to have Jessica Novia, who is the Community-Led Innovation Partnership Project Manager, or CLIP Project Manager, with Yakum Emergency Unit, who is going to talk about how they're implementing the CLIP, or Community-Led Innovation Partnership project in Indonesia. And the CLIP project is also being implemented in the Philippines. And we're happy to be joined by Mayforth de Luneta, who is the Deputy Executive Director for the Center for Disaster Preparedness, or CDP. And Mayforth is going to provide some additional perspectives on how it's approached in the Philippines. And then last but not least, we have Stella Ellis, who is Communication Coordinator with Refugee Child's Coalition for Climate Action, who is going to speak about their work to engage young refugees for climate and environmental action in Zimbabwe. So a great lineup today, and I think the breadth of knowledge and the experience from different regions is really going to give us a lot of great insights, but I know that a lot of you also have insights. So again, just to encourage you throughout the webinar, please feel free to provide your comments in the chat or questions, as well as to ask questions to our panelists using the Q&A if you like. Before we start the presentations, I just wanted to go back to that Menti poll to see what some of those results were. On the first one, in terms of, do you agree with this statement that local leadership is needed for effective climate mitigation and adaptation in humanitarian action? The vast majority of you have said yes, so 4.7 out of 5 on that scale. Less agreement around the statement of national and international humanitarian actors are good at supporting local leadership for climate action. So that's definitely an area where national and international actors have to do much better at supporting local leadership. And I'm sure we'll hear some great suggestions from our panelists today on how we can make those improvements. And an area where we have even more disagreement is that we feel national and international humanitarian actors are good at learning from traditional and indigenous knowledge on mitigation and adaptation measures. So again, a lot of work there for international and national humanitarian actors. So with that, knowing where we have to do a lot of work, I'm going to turn to our panelists to help us have some better ideas of what we can be doing to improve in terms of local leadership on climate action. So first, I'm going to turn to Ellie, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully your connection's working, Ellie.
Yeah, it is working.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ellie. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Manisha, for this great opportunity. I'm also of the view that local leadership is indeed very important in addressing climate issues, because some of the ways in which us as humans contribute to climate change is contextual, and then this might be there might be need of local leadership to design a proper response system to climate change within each and every community. As stressed out, my name is Stella Ellis, and I'm with RCCA, which stands for Refugee Child's Coalition for Climate Action. And then through my presentation, I might use the green abbreviation, which stands for Global Refugee Youth Network. I'm a refugee from the Tonga refugee camp in Zimbabwe. And then throughout in the past years, we have noticed that there was a change within our agricultural youth, and then the temperature around. And then on the 22nd of last year, we sat together to commemorate the Earth Day which was a morning day to us, and which talked to us looking at how badly we are mistreating our earth leading to climate change. Thereafter, we had a survey on climate, and then we actually discovered that most young people within Tonga refugee camp had no knowledge of what climate change is and how we are contributing towards that. So RCCA was therefore formed on the idea of championing youth intervention in combating climate action. I will briefly talk about the impact of climate change on us as refugees, specifically from Tonga refugee camp, as we've been hit by cyclones, as the cyclone Idai in March 2019 and then 2020 as well. And according to the report, 2,000 homesteads within the district were destroyed and about 700 adaptation facilities. We have a series of tropical storms in Tonga refugee camp and heat waves. We also noticed low agricultural yields over the past 5 years and general desertification. So this has greatly impacted the refugee life because one of our greatest sources of income and survival and supplement of our food is through livelihood, and climate change is negatively impacting livelihood, which means our lives are negatively impacted by climate change. So I shall also brief on how refugees in Tonga refugee camp unknowingly or knowingly contributed towards environmental degradation and climate change. So refugees in Tonga refugee camp contributed by cutting down trees as they don't have, or as we don't have, an alternative source of fuel within Tonga refugee camp, and burning of plastics and polyvinyl chloride, because we have no better waste management system in the camp. And then people have been littering around the camp because of the scarcity of immobile bins where people can throw in the dirt. And mainly, at the baseline, we have the lack of knowledge on how our actions cause or lead to climate change, which also is a contribution towards climate change. So us as Refugee Child Coalition for Climate Action plan to fill in the gaps and addressing these challenges by, one, engaging farmers and livestock keepers and share with them on best practices for better use, as they've been, as I say, facing decreasing products over the past 5 years. And we also plan to engage community members on best practices to combat pollution, desertification, and climate change. We are also planning to have a tree nursery and vegetable garden in Tonga refugee camp, which might serve as an income-generating activity for non-accompanied separated children, and then also as a supplement to our local food. We also plan to collaborate with national and international organizations working on climate change for capacity strengthening and then development of better work frames. We plan to advocate for an alternative energy source from UNHCR and stakeholders, as it seems as the only way to prevent people from cutting down trees for fuel like firewood and charcoal. We also plan on having more cleanup campaigns. We've been having cleanup campaigns earlier on, but we plan to increasing the frequency of it and planting more trees within the camp so that we reforestate our region. We also plan on having a number of immobile bins at strategic points within the Tonga refugee camp, such as at the food distribution point, at the child and youth-friendly centers, at playgrounds, among others. We also plan to expand our intervention and build collaboration with the host community, because not only us as refugees are being affected by climate change, but Zimbabweans within the region as well. So we would like to mainly engage the young people, and I'll briefly talk about why we want to engage the young people. This is mainly because they make up the greatest population of our camp, as they constitute more than 84% of the camp's population to today's statistics, and then they have greater spheres of influence. Young people have the will to positively use their energy and passion to impact the community positively. Young people also have flexible understanding, and then most young people within Tonga refugee camp, as I said earlier on, have no knowledge on climate change. Young people are the gateway to modern communication, as they are the stars on social media platforms such as WhatsApp, Facebook, and then reaching out to them might facilitate awareness raising through their social media accounts or through other online platforms. Young people help rehabilitate the camp after the growth from Site Unidari, as young people help reconstruct shelter together with the Department of Social Development that is in charge of shelter within Tonga refugee camp. But we also plan to, however, engage the adults as well as their key decision makers, and us as young people, most of us young people, fall under our parents or guardians. So in our line of work, we have been facing a number of challenges, which include formally running on a zero budget. Though with the help of the lately won Green Grant, we are able to make a greater impact, but however, not getting closer to our ambition, as there's still more we need to do. We had no enough support, though we appreciate the work done by the Department of Social Development, which represents the Zimbabwean government, and UNHCR for encouraging refugee youth to pursue their ideas. We also had shortage of cleanup materials and appropriate cleanup tools, and we also faced persistence from the community to burn charcoal, and as they had a lack of an alternative energy source. So burning charcoal and cutting down trees for firewood was the only energy source, or is the only energy source. Since we are not climate experts, we would also need training to understand in-depth climate science. And one of the greatest challenges we faced as well is having low turnout on cleanup campaigns from the young people, which we assume is mainly due to lack of knowledge, and that is why we want to engage them to a greater extent. So I have a few recommendations with me here to all humanitarian actors here present, in which the first one is financial support, as this would strengthen our intervention, and it would facilitate or help us as young people to respond, to more effectively respond to climate change. We would also need technical support from climate experts so that we develop a better framework. We would also want to have capacity strengthening, which would strengthen our response of youth in climate action, and then play an active role in monitoring, analyzing, and responding to climate emergencies. We also want refugee youth to have the ownership in design and implementation and monitoring of climate response programs. We want to include refugees and other young people to participate in climate meetings, workshops, and summits, as that would help build on their knowledge as well. We want to partner with and learn from other refugee networks and other organizations who are responding to climate change at local levels, as this will help us to develop an inclusive response. So those are the three recommendations I had, and I thank you once more for this opportunity. I hope it's not the last time we meet. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado. Over to you, Manisha.
Thank you so much, Ellie, and particularly for those very concrete recommendations around what international actors can do in particular, which I think can help to address already some of the questions that we've gotten around what is it that international NGOs can do to really support you. So thanks for beating that question in your presentation. So you've already answered it. Before I turn to our next person, I just do want to launch another little Menti cloud for us, a word cloud, to get some of your thoughts from the audience in terms of what you think is most needed to strengthen local leadership in climate and environmental action. And you can just write that down in 1 to 3 words, and you can do that on several times. So even while the presentations are going on, you can add to those responses, just so we get a bit of a sense there. And I think, Ellie, you did a great job of really telling us what it is that refugee youth and young people are doing and how we're able to support you more. And there is a question about how others can learn more about the work of RCCA. So maybe, Ellie, if you want to either drop if you have a website or a way to contact you. I know you said that you're very active on social media, Facebook and WhatsApp, but maybe you could drop that into the chat, or one of us can, to be able to let people really understand how they can learn more about the great work that you're doing. With that, I am going to pass over to Elijah, and we'll be able to come back to everybody with questions at the end. So thank you again, Ellie, and over to you, Elijah.
Thank you very much, Manisha. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone from where you're joining in. My name is Elijah Mulumba, the Program Manager for Candlelight for Environment, Education, and Health. Unless if we all endeavor to build local capacities to respond to climate and environment-related issues, our efforts in responding to humanitarian crisis may have little or even no impact in the long run. We are Candlelight and based in Somaliland. Just a very brief context about Somaliland, where we are, and probably the entire Horn of Africa. This region has been devastated by recurrent natural disasters, including droughts, cyclones, floods, and infestation of desert locusts, among very many others. And when you look at these natural disasters and the resultant humanitarian emergencies that arise thereafter, they are largely connected to issues of climate change and how we relate as humans, how we relate with the environment. Somaliland is largely a pastoral community, with 60% of the population pastoral, and about 40% agro-pastoral. So you can understand how climate and environment-related issues do affect these communities who largely derive their livelihoods from pastoralism or even agro-pastoralism. The area where we operate is faced with lots of conflicts, border-related conflicts or political conflicts, clan conflicts, and resultant internal displacements as a result of the humanitarian emergencies. Access to services is limited. There's high levels of food insecurity, water scarcity, and the like. This may not be related to what we are discussing, but I also wanted to drop it in here. There is a very high prevalence of female genital mutilation in Somaliland. It's standing at almost 98%. Sorry. Yes, who we are. Candlelight for Environment, Education, and Health, based in Somaliland once again. We've been here for over 20 years, founded in 1995 to be specific, and we have field experience in all the regions of Somaliland. Yeah, we are one of the large or biggest national NGOs, and our offices are in Hargeisa, with 5 other regional offices. Some of our main sponsors or partners are UN agencies, EU, Oxfam, Caritas, GIZ, IOM, Development Fund, Islamic Relief, Hallow Trust. We also get some funding from government, but also notably from communities as well. Our vision is a peaceful and environmentally cautious and productive society. Our mission is to build partnerships to improve quality of community lives through environmental conservation, equitable access to quality education, health, and humanitarian services. Our thematic focus is environment and livelihood, education, both formal and non-formal, health and gender. This health and gender largely cross-cut all the other thematic areas, but also emergency humanitarian programs. Yes, when it comes to programming, I think about 5 to 6 years ago, we started realizing that humanitarian development, including resilience and peace building programs, are not standalone. There is a very large correlation between the two. And they are sometimes needed at the same time to respond to the complex community needs, especially in the area where we are working. And this is what is referred to as the triple nexus. We have adopted this as a form of programming, and I must say we are not experts in this. We are still learning, and we will continue learning with the help of some of our international partners. And what we are looking at here is creating synergies across humanitarian and development responses that we do. I've highlighted the fact that we are still learning and we are not experts in this. So please don't ask me or questions related to the triple nexus. We are not experts in that, and we are here to learn as well. And I've looked at some of the charts and the feedback in the chat room, and there is quite a lot that I'm also learning. With the support of one of our partners, that's Oxfam, we've introduced the crisis modifier in our programming. And this is also helping us to respond to humanitarian emergencies or humanitarian crises within our development interventions. Now, our peace building is largely related to conflict analysis, conflict-sensitive programming, which is underpinned by the do no harm principles. In whatever we are doing, we are guided by the do no harm principles. One thing to point out here is that our triple nexus programming and the crisis modifier is largely challenged by conflicting mandates, short-term nature of humanitarian funding, and then the very, very strict or unflexible funding, especially from the development partners that we are working with. Yes, candlelight programming and the environment, climate and environment. One of our niche, one of our key areas is environment, and we are quite strong in that area. Like I said earlier on, in Somaliland, most of the humanitarian emergencies are closely linked to climate change and how humans relate with the environment. So, unless if we clearly understand that, we may not achieve much when it comes to responding to humanitarian emergencies. Diving deep into the climate and environment and humanitarian interventions, what we are doing in Candlelight is we are integrating disaster risk reduction and environmental awareness across all our programs, including humanitarian response or humanitarian emergency projects. We are also doing a lot of trainings on early warning, early action, but most important, building on the traditional knowledge, building on what the community already knows. And then we also try to provide alternative livelihoods, because like I said, humanitarian crises are related to how we relate with the environment, are largely related to how we relate to the environment. One of the previous speaker highlighted on issues to do with clearing vegetation. It's the same thing here in Somaliland, and in Somaliland, the impact is huge because there's pretty much very little vegetation, and if the little that is available is also misused, then you can understand where we are heading to. So there's a lot of tree cutting as people look for sources of fuel, like charcoal, firewood, but also earning a living from selling the charcoal and selling the firewood. So we come in to provide alternative livelihoods as part of solving over-reliance on the environment, on trees, on vegetation as a source of fuel, and also as a source of livelihood. Like I said, there's water scarcity across all Somaliland and Somalia, and probably much of the Horn of Africa. So we are doing a lot of water source rehabilitation as part of responding to the humanitarian crisis that is related to water shortages. And as the water shortages get more as water gets more scarce, there are resource-related conflicts, because we largely have pastoral communities which have large numbers of animals. So as they move in search for water, there are conflicts that are created between the communities. So for us to be able to respond to this and kind of prevent the conflicts, we do rehabilitate water points in areas where the pastoral communities are. We rehabilitate or even put up new water sources like boreholes. We do dig a lot of dams, earth dams. We do construct lots of barkads, underground water systems that traditionally used by the communities here in Somaliland. When we are designing humanitarian response projects, there is a lot of, especially related to food security. We are looking at providing people with opportunities to be able to access food. So what we have done as an environmentally cautious organization is that for all our conditional cash transfers, we link them to an aspect of either rehabilitating a degraded rangeland or dealing with some aspect of water conservation in order to enable regeneration, quick regeneration of the pasture and rangelands. So
Elijah, I'm just going to give you a quick time check because you're at about 13 minutes already, and I know you've got many more slides to go.
All right, I will try to move faster.
Thank you.
Like I said, we do lots of conditional cash transfer, and the cash transfers are linked to rehabilitating rangelands, tree planting, and other aspects like soil and water conservation. I'll show you a picture of some of the soil and water conservation measures that we do. We also do a lot of awareness raising, working with communities, working with schools, awareness raising on radios, using different IEC materials, just to enable people understand the cause of the situation in which we are, and then be cautious about how to manage the environment. These are soil bands. We do make these. This is an open land, rangeland. The ones that, I don't know whether you can be able to see them very well. These are soil bands that we dig. Each person is assigned a specific amount of task to do, or a specific number of bands to dig, and then we will pay them. We do this in a humanitarian and our humanitarian response. In one way, we are providing them with cash to be able to buy food. In another way, we are rehabilitating a degraded rangeland, which will be able to have pasture regenerate, and then the people can be able to graze their animals. Here we also do lots of tree planting on international campaigns. We have nurseries in our different offices, and we also work with the Ministry of Environment, helping them to set up tree nurseries, which we use when to provide tree seedlings for international tree planting campaigns. Like I said, we do lots of water source rehabilitation. This is one of the areas. Also, in terms of regenerating or degraded lands, this was a piece of land that was degraded. We rehabilitated it. We provided water for irrigation as part of this water facility that we rehabilitated. We installed solar panels to be able to pump water to communities or households, but to also be able to irrigate such lands. And then the results are pretty much good. We've also kind of tried to transform people from the traditional pastoral lifestyle to some form of agriculture where it is possible. And this is some form of alternative livelihood, such that if livestock is being affected by climate and by climate change, then someone can still earn a living from this form of from agriculture, crop production. Community participation is very, very important for us as an organization, and we value it so much. Community participation at all levels of project design, project implementation, and also providing feedback. We do this in a number of forms. We do post-distribution monitorings. We have set up a complaint, a toll-free complaints and response mechanisms where communities can easily relate with us, talk to us, tell us their challenges, and also respond to them. We do lots of assessments to inform our programming, but we also rely on assessments that are being done by other stakeholders, other partners. And much of our programming is based, or project design is based on the feedback, on the information that we get from the communities. In that way, we are able to design successful and pretty much sustainable projects. Some of the challenges that we face as local actors, the recurrence of the natural disasters have drained the resources, the little resources that we have. This means increasing community needs versus less resources that we have. Resources not only in terms of money, but also the human resource and others. As local actors, we face lots of stiff competition for resources, funding with international actors, because we go into the same pool. We look for resources from same sources. But sometimes we are limited by capacity to access funding from reasonable funding from the donors. The other challenge of we are facing integrating environmental issues into humanitarian funding is the short-term nature of the humanitarian funds. You will agree with me that most of the humanitarian funding is 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, at most 1 year. And when you look at, given our experience in terms of environmental, responding to climate and environmental issues, these need long-term planning and certainty of the funding. So if the funding is not certain, then it is very, very hard to design and implement successful projects related to climate change and the environment. The inflexible funding for national actors, the funding that we get is very, very strict. It's not flexible. So sometimes if you have humanitarian crisis in the middle of a project, it's very, very hard to reposition those funds to either respond to the humanitarian emergencies that are coming up. Some of the opportunities that we have as local actors, in whichever definition that you may look at local actors, is the good knowledge of the local context. I'm looking at ourselves as a national local actor, but also the communities. They have good knowledge of the context. We need to tap into the knowledge that they have to be able to design successful programs. We have respect in communities and other stakeholders. Ease of access to the remotest and hard to reach areas. Understanding the context in Somaliland, there are pockets which are very, very hard to reach. So local and national actors can easily access these pockets. The other opportunity that I would want to mention here is that during COVID-19, local or national actors were able to show their capacity to respond. A number of, I was here in Somaliland, a number of international NGOs repatriated their staff, and we remained with local national actors, and we were able to respond. There could have been some issues here and there, but I was happy with the response by the national actors.
Elijah, you've got 1 more minute, if you could.
Yeah.
Just because
coordination and coordination is also equally important if local or national actors are to be able to have successful responses. What we value as an organization is local solutions for local problems. I don't mean that we don't want to learn from elsewhere. Let us learn, but contextualize what we have learned to be able to fit into the context. And then mutually benefiting partnerships between the international organization and local or national actors. The partnerships shouldn't be donor-recipient. They should be mutually. There is something that a local or national actor is bringing on board. Let us use that to mutually benefit each other. Then localization, as an organization, we're a strong advocate for localization. I have a bit of a challenge of how we all understand localization. There are different understandings of localization, but we need to harmonize this. And then utilizing our learnings to improve program design and implementation is very, very key for us. I thank you very much, and we appreciate the opportunity given to us by ICVA and PHAP to be able to share our experiences, but equally important, learn from our colleagues as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elijah. And I think the way that you were talking about how you're really listening to communities when you're designing the programs and building on their knowledge is something that's critical. And I think a really good example of how other organizations should really be engaging with communities much more in the design of and program implementation and monitoring as well. And I think comes back very much to the point that Eli was making at the beginning, Eli, sorry, about really engaging refugee youth as well and making sure that young people are engaged. And this point really about building on local knowledge is so important. And I think oftentimes as international organizations, we will often come in thinking there's experts in there without listening to what's happening locally. So thank you very much for clarifying on the way that you're working on that and really the emphasis on community participation. Elijah, I'm going to ask you because there was a question in the chat about what a crisis modifier is, but because we're over time, I'm just going to ask you if you could put that reply in the chat so everybody could hear the answer to that, and we can come back to that because I do want to move on to our other panelists. So thank you very much, Elijah. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Jessica, who's going to talk about community-led innovation partnership. Jessica, please.
Thank you very much, Manisha. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. My name is Jessica from Yakum Emergency Unit Indonesia. And today I'm going to share the Community-Led Innovation Partnership Project, or we call it CLIP. So what is CLIP? First of all, I will introduce who we are. It's a partnership funded by the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office FCDO with ELRA in the UK, ADRN in Japan, Standard Work in UK, as having role as the coordinator partner, and then YEU in Indonesia as the implementing partner. So the CLIP project is currently ongoing into other countries as well, which is in Guatemala by ASEXA and in Philippines by CDP. CLIP aims to support the emergence and development of locally driven solutions to humanitarian problems identified by people affected directly by the crisis. Our community-led approach seeks to ensure that innovative new solutions are produced that are contextually appropriate and locally owned, making them more likely to be sustainable and impactful. In Indonesia, we established IDEAksi, which translates to idea, innovation, action, inclusion, as part of the CLIP program to fund the innovations ideas in disaster management for local communities, organizations with disabilities, older people, and other most at-risk groups. So the EDXC project aims to increase accessibility, accountability, and inclusion of people with disabilities and older people in disaster preparedness, as well as humanitarian response through supported community-led innovations. These innovations do not come from us as the implementing partners, but it comes directly from the community based on the needs from the community to answer the problems in their own area or village. So until now, maybe you are now questioning, so where do the innovations come from? Within the EDXC, we act as the innovation hub to search for the local innovators in area. So we implement this area in where our NGO is located in Yogyakarta, special region of Yogyakarta in Indonesia. We opened a call for concept note, so the local communities or organizations can submit their interests and ideas. It is important that this information is out to people. So we contacted the local newspaper to publish about this call. We created an Instagram page, and then we sent a broadcast message to our local networks and communities via WhatsApp, via email. We share it to all of the social medias, and we also Google about local communities in the area as we reach out to them directly via email to inform them about this project, so then they can participate in submitting their concept note. We also hosted a Zoom webinar introducing this project to attract more communities to join. We have some requirements for the submission. One very specific about the income of the community or the organization must be less than 70,000 US dollars per year, or like the fund that they manage. This is to ensure that it's reaching to small organizations only. And the first journey in this project is the explore phase, where to identify priority problems area within communities. At the beginning, we conducted a community consultation to identify disaster threat as the baseline, also to see the obstacles from the community perspective and to learn it from their own voices, especially people with disabilities, older people, women, and youth, and to see how far it is actually that they are involved during the assessment of the disaster threat in their area, and then the decision-making process until the monitoring in the area where they reside. And for this, we use some questionnaires for the surveys and also hosting a focus group discussions as the tools. And before we implemented this in the area, we asked the inputs from the community representatives about these tools. During this process, we were also working together with the local enumerators for gathering the survey information. We gave an introduction training for them to understand how to have interaction with people with disabilities and to create an enabling environment during this discussion. And we see it as a very important step to provide a place where everyone can feel safe and they can deliver their opinions. And the next steps, we also commissioned a scoping study to better understand about the current gaps in inclusive disaster management practices in Indonesia and to see some of the recommendations based on this study. The study is available to download on our website. Please take a look and visit the website, and you can see more about the inclusive humanitarian system and its landscape in Indonesia. And for the internal project team, we also strengthening our capacities and ensuring there is a safeguarding local point. And also we learn more about some trainings and also about the design thinkings, about how to implement safeguarding the communities, how to combine it with the whistleblowing. And we also pass this training to our local innovators that we partner on. And why this is important? Because we are working closely with most at-risk groups. So by having a safeguarding mechanism is really important. And highlight of this project is about the partnership. Is the keyword and the highlight of this project. Where in Indonesia, we are also working together with a team of technical reviewers in selection to select these local innovators and also during the workshop process. This is the representative from organization of persons with disabilities. We have one person as the representative. And also we will also working with the local disaster management agency from the government unit, from a faith-based organization, from the academics, and also a representative from UN OCHA as the team. There is also a partnership with youth and young professionals in science, engineering, technology, and innovation in DRR, disaster risk reduction, with a Youth Inspire Alliance in Indonesia as our innovation advisor. We're also working with an expert in inclusive DRR as inclusion advisor, and a contract-based partnership with mentors in different fields, such as where we have to learn more about the digital accessibility expert or the A11Y, and also about the social entrepreneurship expert and others. And this is the timeline of the project, where we had the call of the concept note last year, and then there were 43 concept notes submitted. Then later we selected these 15 local communities. And these 15 local innovators, they joined the series of the workshop in the discovery phase to identify and select ideas with design thinking approach to find solutions based on the needs of the local community. And then the local innovators also went to test their ideas and prototype at the field. We also hosted a virtual demo day where the 15 innovators pitched their idea. It's available via our YouTube. Please take a look too. And then during this pitching demo day, we also hope that the 5 non-selected innovators could have a partnership with people who joined the demo day, and then they could introduce about their innovation to find a partnership outside of this project. And later on, we selected 10 local innovator teams to get the fund around $6,000 to each innovator to develop their locally led innovations, which include people with disabilities, women, older people to be involved from the design process until monitoring of the innovation. And besides for the disaster management, some of the innovations are also related to the climate change adaptation. This is the mixed irrigation innovation developed by the farmer group. It is based on the needs from the communities. They have many older farmers in the area, and also some farmers with physical disabilities. With this mixed irrigation, it will give easier water access, so then the farmers do not need to walk too far to carry on the water or to take the water to watering their crops. Also, this can save the water since the area is also facing drought during the dry season. This innovation can be implemented in the shelter camp also during the emergency time, so then people can have a productive activity during farming. And then the second sample, and all of these are still ongoing innovations. We have 2 local innovators who are developing an inclusive early warning system. One is located in the urban housing next to the riverside, which always facing about a flood where there will be raining. And then another one is an early warning system equipped with light and sound system for volcano eruption. It will help during the evacuation process. And this innovation can also be used for the tsunami scenario too. So the light system could guide those with visual impairment or deaf, while the sound system could guide blind people to walk during the evacuation. These needs are based on the experience of the community during the 2010 volcano eruptions. The innovators also put the sticker sign on the house. You can see on the far left on the top. The colors have significant meanings to identify that there are older people or disability or pregnant women or children in the house. And then these colors can be identified only by the rescue team or the village apparatus or the leader of the village in the area, because this to mitigate from people who maybe have ill intention if they know there are vulnerable people in the house. Another innovator is developing a website-based innovation to targeting people with HIV/AIDS based on the experiences during pandemic where the medications and counseling stopped due to the lockdown. With their digital-based innovation, they aim to give assistance for those who in need related to HIV/AIDS. It can also be used during disaster emergency situation in the shelter, where they can link the system with the healthcare system, so then people can still get their medication while they have to move even though from their home. And last but not least, is a waste management innovation with Maggot to manage organic waste. This is done by the river community. in answering the needs to reduce the waste in the area, also as a climate change adaptation towards the threat of accumulating waste in the landfill. The innovators are introducing this mega system and training to schools with children with disabilities too. They are also distributing the mega box to all the people in the area so that everyone can participate in managing the waste, also to reduce people burning their waste. And there are some challenges in the other sides. We also see this as the opportunities. First, we have to put COVID-19 as during this implementation is really one of the biggest challenges that we have. Some of the activities and also in the beginning of the workshops were forced to be done via online, while in some area the internet connection may be not stable at all. On the other side, it's also an opportunity because it also brings them to know about the digitalization. And some innovators, they use this experience of using Zoom, and then they also passing this knowledge to teach people in their village. And they also said they use our materials on how to delivering about Zoom, and then they teach the people in the village. And second, the understanding of the root problem is highly needed to ensure the innovations are answering the needs, and there are certain gaps still found from one innovators to the others. So if you are about to implementing this project with a very variation of the innovator teams, this could be a challenge, but also, of course, this is also the opportunity to strengthen the capacities of each team, and also for the local innovators, so they can develop a sustainable project. We value the feedback and inputs from the local innovators and communities. At every workshop that we hold, we always ask for the evaluation from them. We also do a regular monitoring and visit them directly to discuss the challenge and progress and how we might help them. Further assistance from the project is given based on the needs of each innovator team. And then third, with many cases of projects funded are mostly cannot sustain, it may be happening too in this project. So if you consider to have this partnership project within your organization, this is also a challenge and an opportunity, because with a locally owned initiative, this is a high opportunity to keep it grow and sustain for a longer time. So we also give them capacities building training, and also we try to support them to have a partnership with stakeholders and local government. It's essential elements during this process. And for the next, we are preparing for the growth phase. From these 10 local innovators, we will select 4 that will give a bigger funding, and then these 6 we will still remain our non-financial assistance, also to help them to give the ownership of this innovation, also to link it with the government. We are also working on the advocacy activities, and then we are selected in the innovation platform during the Global Platform Disaster Risk Reduction this year, 2022, on the innovation platform exhibition in person and virtually. So if you will also join this event in Bali, please come to our booth and say hello. And then for further information, please kindly visit www.innovasi.yu.org.id. Thank you very much.
Manisha, you're on mute, I think. Okay. It seems to not be working right. Thanks a lot, Jessica. And it's really interesting what you showcased and how you're really engaging the communities, and the initiatives that are coming actually are through them, and it's for them. So it's something that we've been talking about. How do you engage communities to be part of the design, the program itself, and the implementation and follow up? So that's super interesting. And I would actually maybe put the folk now to Mayfoot, because that is a complementary of what Mayfoot is doing in Philippines, that can be an addition to what you're doing. So over to you, Mayfoot. Over.
Thank you very much, Nishani, and Jessica. Thank you very much for starting our presentation, and I would like to share my presentation as well. In the Philippines, if it's in Indonesia, we call it Idiakasi. In the Philippines, we call it Pinovation Academy. It's a shorter version of Pinoy Innovation, which means Pinoy, Filipino. innovation. Academy, because this is an academy, a platform where people would learn. And of course, same group of people supporting it: ELRA, Start Network, ADR, and of course in the Philippines, it's CDP. So the goal of this is to actually create a culture of innovation for the communities, because they themselves are the ones who have lots of needs and also have lots of ideas, and also lots of problems, gaps, and a lot of things, especially when it comes to disaster risk reduction. And that's why we would like to promote the culture of innovation, and not only promote the culture of ideating it, but supporting it. We're hoping here in the Philippines, we're hoping that even after the project, we're hoping that the government, the private sector, the CSOs would support this Innovation Academy. So what we did is almost the same as what they had in Indonesia. We just have some a bit of differences, but here it is. The Philippines, we have the Luzon and Visayas Mindanao hubs. We have 3 hubs divided by the 3 major islands, and out from that, we have like a consultation. Around 160 organizations were reached, and we asked them to participate in the proposal making with the communities. Not only, of course, it's a community-led innovation, but we've coursed through the CSOs, their partner communities, so that the communities will also be empowered. Well, the CSO should be the supporting, and then of course the community will be the one leading it. And now, as you can see, we have like 67 proposals submitted, and 15 were selected. 5 from Luzon, 5 from Visayas, 5 from Mindanao. So we have like 15. And as you can see, we try to embrace local communities and local actors, trying to look at the most vulnerable, but at the same time, the most precious resource of all, the community people. As you can see, we have like organizations from the sector of women, LGBTQI, indigenous people, persons with disability, children, youth, farmers, fisher folks, and also diverse themes like environmental, and then multi-sectoral, and then that's it. And then, of course, after that, okay, so these are, oh, sorry. I'm trying to cut everything short. So these are the top 15 innovations that we had in Luzon, where we have the different also hazards, the different hazards that we have in the Philippines, almost the same with the Indonesian. We have like fire, earthquake, typhoon, flood, how do you say this, war, you name it, we have it. We just don't have storm, of course. We just don't have snow, of course. But other things, we usually have it. Now, in innovations, for Luzon, what was approved was indigenous alternative way to emergency Nutri-Bar. A Nutri-Bar which is locally made from banana and the coconut, not like the granola thing. So local in our sense. Another is application of water siphon technology, wherein so that the water can easily flow to the fields. Then organic farming and system of rice intensification, accessible tricycle mobile service for persons with mobility impairment. This is quite cool because it's like if it's in Thailand, you call it tuk-tuk. In the Philippines, we call it tricycle, but it's inclusive, and the persons with disability who have mobility impairment can ride it, and so that's the innovative idea, and they would be so that it will be easier for them to move, no? Then innovation, another is innovative community gardens for children, then indigenous community food bank and maternal marine reserve. Okay, in Visayas, we have solar-powered two-way radio communication with Kurotong as message repeater. Kurotong is like the bamboo thing, no? And then community theater production, youth videos and vlogs. You see, innovations are cuts across ages. Then merger of two traditional fishing gears, contour farming, and then carbonized rice hull bamboo water filter. So as water filter, you use the rice hull and bamboo charcoal. Then in Mindanao, we have free energy water supply system, sustainable food production and health, indigenous natural healing center, indigenous forest-based DRM. This is one cool thing. We don't have like an academy for indigenous forest-based DRR, but we have like forest rangers. So what they did, they tried to make a module or a course that is easy to come into. The ones who will go there are the forest guards, which is usually the indigenous people, and then after that they would have a license and things like that. So another innovation. Then innovating nasi dike. It's a dike made of bamboo, and then a woman managed a mangrove area. Sorry, the mangrove fell off. So these are the top 15 innovations that we had, and these are the ones being supported by the CLIP project. And what we did through partnership, just like Jessica said, partnership is the key word. We partner with another partner from the private sector and the government. We call it Philippine Preparedness Partnership, wherein CDP is also involved. They also funded like the consolation prize. So the others have like 500,000 funding pesos, not dollars, of course. And then, of course, for the consolation, we have 100,000 pesos. So instead of having 15, now we have 18 innovators approved, but it's above the project. Okay, so then that's another good thing that came out from the partnerships. And then who are the sectors represented? As we are saying that the community, we're embracing that the community members and actors should really go in front of these solutions and disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptations. And so how do we do it? So we make sure that these sectors are the ones being in front of it, and they are the ones having much points in the selection process. So we have, of course, the farmers, indigenous people, fisher folks, youth, children, persons with disability, then other, the LGBTQIAP+, and then women. So in this, when we talk about DRR, most of them are talking about the four phases: prevention, preparedness, response, and the recovery and rehab. The recovery and rehab and then the mitigation part are usually addressing climate change adaptation. Not all, but usually they do. So that's why it is actually embedded in the innovative solution. That's why the triple nexus are also embedded in our strategy. So that's it. And then, so if you look at the innovations, we did not cover every city and every municipality, but we try to have diversion and inclusion all over, at least across, from Luzon to Mindanao. And it is really quite interesting to see how different cultures at the same time, parallel cultures can really help. And also one good thing also in this innovation is that not only in the Philippines, also in Indonesia, Jessica and our team are trying to talk and share with each other, and we're planning also to have like a sharing of the community members that they have in Indonesia and also with ours, to make sure that everything can be shared, no? And strategies will also be shared to empower more the community people. Yeah. So that's it, I think. So we're also now still in the part of the testing, prototyping, and continuous advocacy, that even if the project ends, they will embrace the idea of the Pennovation Academy and make it sustainable. That's our main goal, to make it mainstreamed and sustainable. Even the project ends, it will continue. So our project will end next year. I think where we were learning also a lot from YE, because they have started earlier from their call. So that's it. That's what we did in the Philippines. Any questions? Jessica would love to answer, and also I will also. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you very much, May 4th. And sorry for my Zoom freezing on me. It's the first time that happened, so I couldn't introduce you, but thank you very much, May 4th. And also thank you, Jessica, for your presentations as well. We do have some questions for you, but before we go to the Q&A, thought maybe it would be good to take a look at that word cloud that we had up. Thank you very much for sharing that. So in 1 to 3 words, what is most needed to strengthen local leadership in climate and environmental action? And trust is coming out as the thing that is most needed. And then you've got things like direct funding, respect, training, knowledge, capacity building, advocacy, flexible funding, listening, and lots of other elements there. We'll leave that up there for you to take a look at. But I think a lot of what was presented from our 4 presenters was very much about having that trust and really building on the knowledge that is there. And also this issue about having direct funding, but also flexible funding, and also not necessarily just short-term humanitarian funding, but that can be used in the longer term, just because it does take time to build up many of these innovations or programs that are locally led. And I think that point very much was coming out about it really needing to be led by communities. And I think the examples that Jessica, you and May 4th just gave very much also focused on the inclusion of older persons, persons with disabilities, and other groups that we may not normally reach out to, but there's a lot of knowledge there. Perhaps we can turn to the questions that we've got. We had a number of questions that were shared with us in advance, plus ones that are coming there. Nishani, do you want me to start, or would you like to start with some of the questions to our panelists?
Maybe I can start with one to Elijah and Ellie. I think it's for both of them. And I think it's important to look at, we have 2 questions that I'm kind of going to combine. Because while we talk about climate change and environment impact, one of the key things that people in the communities are looking at is livelihoods, especially if you're in conflict zones, if you're in already really fragile context. Livelihood is key. There is that balance of how do you support livelihood opportunities, income generation, making sure that they have the basic needs provided, with looking at nature-based solutions, or looking at how do you support people to look after their environment. And I think both Elijah and Ellie have been working, your organizations have been working on this. How do you do that balance, and what are maybe what is one key thing that you can look at to support the linking of the 2 of them? And there have been 2 questions on this sort of the balance of the both of them, if at all, you could say. Over to Ellie and Elijah. Is Ellie around?
Okay. In line with livelihood, climate change negatively impacts livelihood and has a direct negative impact on livelihood products. So having knowledge about climate change also helps us understand the current climatic trends that we have, and then that can inform farmers' interventions or the type of seeds they need to use, and the type of chemicals, speaking to fertilizers and other types of chemicals they can use in line with getting the best out of their crops. So having knowledge about climate change really impacts them, as it gives up knowledge on how we can cope and then build resilience given the current climatic conditions. I didn't hear very well the last part of the question. I don't know if you can come again, please.
I think you made the connection. It's also, how do you get local communities to accept nature-based solutions or look at climate change and the impact when you are trying to raise awareness and make change and change behaviors and patterns of local communities? Over.
Well, I think in line with making them accept, it is a matter of connecting the theory to the practical. If what you're saying theoretically reflects what they are facing on the ground, I'm sure there will be no doubt.
Thanks, Eli. Over to you, Elijah.
Thank you very much, Nishan. I think this is one of the challenges that we face. Yes, we've been into this for some time, but it's also still a challenge for us. Looking at protecting the environment or sustainably using the environment, but as well having people to live a decent life. One of the things that we are trying to do is to provide alternative sources of livelihoods that are not having a very big impact on the environment. For example, we do a lot of skills training. We've realized that a lot of young people, Somaliland is a very young population. So we are providing alternative skills in terms of technical and vocational education skills training for them to live off the environment. That is one of the areas. We are also trying to provide things like energy saving stoves. Yes, people will still use the environment, but we'll try to come up with technologies that can try to reduce the impact. We are not stopping them from using, but reduce the impact on the environment. That's another area. The other thing that we are also trying to do is to teach people the value, the importance of them to protect the environment or sustainably use the resources that are within the environment that they are living in. And these are some of the things that we are doing, but there is no one magic bullet. It's a combination of different interventions that we do. But and also keeping learning as we go along.
Super. Thanks so much, Elijah. And I think that point of learning is something that's come up in some of the other questions. There's one in terms of from Loy about how do you help those valuable ideas and how do you promulgate them, I guess, or promote them, even if you can't fund them. Sort of what can you do if you don't have funding? I think all of you spoke about some of the challenges that we see in terms of funding for local actors, the lack of flexibility, the lack of long-term funding. Are there things that you can do when that funding is not available? And is there also, and maybe this is a bit more for you, Jessica and Mayforth, in terms of the sustainability from those innovations? You know, when you've had those innovation projects, what are you able to do in terms of longer term sustainability? And then there was a very specific question also for you in terms of the clip. And when you have rejected proposals, have you provided guidance and mentorship in order for them to be able to perhaps come back another time and submit a more successful proposal? So maybe I can start with either Jessica or Mayforth, and then we can come back to Elijah or Eli if you've got comments on the sustainability and the how do you work without the funding questions. Jessica or Mayforth, I'll pass to you.
Okay, I will go first.
Thanks.
About the sustainability, during all of the workshops, the innovation workshops, we always bring out the key element of the partnership. So then this partnership can also work outside of this CLIP project, where they can work with the stakeholders, they can work with the local government, that we also provide business model training, and also like we hosted this demo day teaching where they could learn how to make a short video to deliver their ideas. So hopefully, even though not partnering with YEU within this CLIP project, we still hope that they can get another funding from the other projects with the capacities training that we have given to them. And for those who got rejected proposals in the beginning, we selected 15. And then they got all of this non-financial support with the innovation workshops, with the mentorships, with the learning about the safeguarding, about the DRR, inclusion, innovation, and then we selected 10. So with these 5, we still have like a WhatsApp group, and then when we have like trainings or workshops or like chances that they can pitch in their idea in the other project, we can still share it to them. So that's to answer the question number 1, and about the, like we can go to May 4th and I will answer later. Thank you, Manisha.
Thanks, Jessica.
Well, the same thing, Jessica, with us in the Philippines, and what we do is we try to connect also like a private sector who is interested in this, like in water innovations. Then we try to connect them with the water innovators, and then also with the farmers, we connect it with the government and things like that. But the thing what we also wanted to do is to really go into the government side to support this platform. That's why we also go to the advocacy, wherein we're hoping that there would be a memorandum of understanding wherein the government, national and even local, together with the other stakeholders and duty bearers to support this program. So even if this ends, then there will be another call, Innovation Academy still, but other players will come in. So that's our dream. But I think it will be okay to dream, because having the Innovation Academy is just a figment of our imagination. But now we've done it. We've moved forward to it. So you just have to put your passion in, not only in your mind, in your heart, but in your advocacy. So it will continue even if the project ends. So another is what and I like what Jessica said. Also lobby it with the local government unit, because for the one that I'm saying is really far from reality yet still. But for local government, it's much easier to connect, right, Jessica? Easier to connect with the local innovators and so on and so forth. Then of course, what we also do, all the proposals still with us and also with them. So if we also look, if we at one point we see some things that can be sponsored or can be funded, then we tap them again and we put them together. And of course, our loop is not ending. As we've said, even if they're not selected, we tell them that once we have training, also things like that, it's still they are still involved in it, so that they will continue to learn until they probably have their own proposal accepted by others. So that's the reason why even we have only like 15, we increased to 18. That's already one indicator of we're trying to continuously match the innovators with the funders, whether it's local or international. So you just have to be creative also in making it sustainable, creative and innovative at the same time. And that's one good thing also, because this is a region wide. That's why what we learn, we try to share with our other partners like Jessica. What we've learned from them, we also implement in our area. And that's the beauty of it. The more interaction, the more learning, it also helps in making it sustainable. Because it's not always funding. The learning itself will also help it the idea itself. That's it. I have to stop. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayforth. And I think that's a really important point, is that we can do a lot with that sharing of learning and innovation. And there was a question in the Q&A around, are there any innovations that have been multi-context? So I think that the sharing of information and innovations that you've got between Indonesia and Philippines, I imagine, can also spark some of those kind of multi-context innovations. But are there any projects in CLIP, I guess, that are those sort of multi-context ones, or are they very focused on the communities that you've got them working in now? Or do you envisage something that's, you know, across the Philippines or across Indonesia as an innovation project, or even across other countries?
May I start, Jessica?
And then I will come back to you, Elijah and Eli, sorry.
Well, I guess for us, it's an academy wherein all the innovative ideas will be cataloged, will be well documented, so that other communities can also learn from it. That's why that's our hope also. It's not yet done because we're still doing it. We're hoping, like, for example, water filter using rice hull and charcoal, things like that. So it's suggested in Visayas, in the middle part. So communities in the Luzon, the upper part and the lower part, they can copy it, but then again, putting it in their context. So again, that's another skill in innovation, you know, learning from other innovation and then putting them in your context. So that's it. And that's why also remember, Jessica, one discussion that we had is, if we have like similar innovations, maybe for sectors like farmers, we can let them talk, and then probably they can make a new innovation out from there. No, that's why we're also thinking of letting have that conversations. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mayforth, for the explanation. Yeah, I will just echo Mayforth. It's really about a partnership, and then we need to know that innovation is not an invention. So using a local wisdom, and then you do a trial and improve. You can always keep growing. You learn from the other area, but it probably not applicable to your area. So you change like something with it. It's already an innovation. So yeah, when we talk about innovation, we also give this to the local innovator. It's not about technology. It's not about something new that you discover. It's about how you can bring something to your community that is not there yet. That is just in your dream, and then you can make it come true with a reasonable thing. Like you can make it come true with something like out of the thin air that they wish they could do, but it's not like supported by the capacities. So it's something really real, and it's like coming from the communities, coming from the people in need. So it's best on what they need. So I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jessica. And I like that point about innovation is not invention. It's really listening to what local knowledge is there. I think oftentimes in our humanitarian discourse, we talk about innovation as like the greatest thing since sliced bread, but in fact, it's like building on things that are already there that we may just not think about, but really listening to communities and making sure that we're inclusive in terms of different diverse groups within communities, because they will have different ideas. As you said, you know, persons with disabilities will have different ideas of how best to meet needs in their communities based on their experiences. Eli and Elijah, maybe I could come back to you around that sort of sustainability question. You know, how do you make sure that with that local leadership, you've got sustainability for some of those ideas and projects and programs that you're implementing, even if the funds aren't necessarily there? I mean, that challenge of funding, I think, is something we've seen across numerous crises, and particularly related to climate change. It's something where we're really not seeing adequate funding going in there yet. So what is it that you're able to do from that sustainability side? I know you're doing lots of great programs, but are there some examples and lessons that you can share with participants, please? Eli or Elijah? I don't know which one wants to go first. Elijah, please.
Thank you very much, Manisha, and my Jessica and Mayforth. I think they have hinted on some areas that I would also want to point out. But yes, sustainability is also another thing that we grapple with on a daily basis when it comes to climate change and environmental interventions, environmental-related interventions. But some of the things that we are doing, and they have worked, I still don't want to say 100%, but in some areas they have worked and in other areas they haven't worked. One of them is skills transfer, where we transfer skills to the people. We don't provide them. For example, the energy saving stoves. We don't, in some cases, we haven't distributed stoves, but we've taught communities on how to make the stoves themselves, but also showing them the value that these stoves come along with. That's one area. Then another one is we are also, of recent, we've started getting into partnerships that are non-financial. Because there are lots of people who would be willing to provide technical know-how. They may not have the money, but they can help you in terms of providing you with technical skills. So that is one area of we look at, we do with sustainability. And universities, also government are sometimes willing to provide this. Then we've also looked at community managed protected areas. We only come in to do little, to provide capacity building, but the community manage the area enclosures, the protected areas that have been set up. The community do the management themselves. We help them to set bylaws, and this is another area. We introduce bylaws that would guide the protection, the utilization of these area enclosures. In some cases, we've set them up. And we also closely work with the Ministry of Environment. We closely work with the Ministry of Environment to provide legislation where it is needed, but also to provide enforcement where there is need for enforcement. Because sometimes sustainability comes with a little bit of enforcement of some of the bylaws. I think those are some of the areas that I can talk about, just to give room for my colleague to also.
Super. Thanks very much, Elijah. And I think, as you said, it's something we've all got to work on. None of us are 100% good at it. And I think and learning from each other and what we're doing is always a great way to get other ideas of how to move towards that sustainability. Eli, did you want to come in on that sustainability element and sort of what are some lessons from your side as RCCA?
Okay, as RCCA, over the past 3 years, we've also been working on a zero budget. So we, however, ensure sustainability and continuity of programs despite the fact that there's no funding. So we do make use of existing platforms. During the COVID period, we were making mainly use of online platforms such as community WhatsApp groups or community Facebook groups, so that we could raise awareness and strengthen capacity. So we also made advantage of existing events, like we know women in the community have their meetings, say once in 2 weeks or once in a month. Then would request for some time just to share a short message on climate change and how we can combat it. And we also sometimes make use of stakeholders meetings where they gather people around, or sport events where people gather around. We would ask the organizer to offer us 20, 30 minutes so that we can share some information and also say something in line with how we're doing and how best we expect the community to help us. So in line with our cleanup campaigns that we hold in the community, despite the fact that we didn't have tools as RCCA, we would target the most active people within the community whom we know are willing to combat climate change and have the knowledge, they have some knowledge about what climate change is. We would target them and invite them to our cleanup campaigns, and they'll be bringing maybe their own tools that they use in their fields to help us maintain our environment. And we would also sometimes request for some tools from operating partners within the camp, such as World Vision that does with hygiene and sanitation. So we would borrow some tools from them for a while and then use them as well in our cleanup campaign. So we've been able to run and ensure sustainability and continuity of climate response, despite the fact that we had no budget over.
Thanks very much, Eli. Nishani, did you have other questions or do you want me to keep going?
I just had a question, and I think it could run across all four speakers. I think when we talked about localization, Alicia, you mentioned that you had a different understanding sometimes of localization and what it means and how the international community may understand it or work on it. And it'll be good a little to unpack what you meant by that, one, and to be at the table. What does it mean to communities that you work with, to be at the table where decision making happens, be it at country level? And I'm not sure how much you're all involved in the international humanitarian system coordination mechanisms that are at country. There's the humanitarian country team, clusters, different modalities of coordination, and that's important to have this the community voices, be it at local actors, be it national NGOs, who are bringing this up. And how can you think that we could do this better at the international level, but at country level? And I think this is talking about Elijah, you as a Somaliland Candlelight, national NGO, Jessica and Mayfood, both of you are working at local community levels, and Ellie, you're a refugee doing so much great work. How can we help you to bring that voice and be at the table better? Over.
Can I? Thank you very much, Nishan. Well, what I meant about localization, different understandings. I've attended a number of meetings where we have discussed the elephant, localization, but you realize that different stakeholders or different organizations define it a little bit different. And by the time you get out of the room, you have like 3, 4, 5 interpretations of localization. So I think what needs to be done is to have, I don't know how this will be done for sure. I don't have an answer, but having a common understanding of what localization is and what it means to all of us. Because I've had different, for sure, I've had different, excuse me, interpretations of localization. So there's need for much more unpacking and coming up with a common understanding of what localization is. That's one thing. And then the other area where you said, I can't remember the term you used.
To be at the table,
coming to the table, yes.
To be able to make decisions and not
yes,
just be given down the decision.
I think this is also a good thing. But I think like 2 years ago, Candlelight was a representative for the national actors on the Somalia Humanitarian country team. But when I was discussing with my executive director who used to represent us, to represent Somalia to this country team, he also had challenges. So I think we need to go beyond having a physical presence there. Because sometimes it's the physical presence that, yes, we have a local actor on board, but to also be able to build the capacity of these local actors to be able to bring the agendas of the people they represent, and these agendas to be considered, because there is a disconnect in terms of having the physical representation, but also being able to present the agendas, and then these agendas being incorporated into the priorities that are being discussed at these platforms. Candlelight, we are not a small NGO, like I said, we are quite big, and when we speak, someone would probably understand, yes, Candlelight has spoken, but I just can't imagine another like small organization get someone like the executive director sitting on the humanitarian country team. The discussions that happen there and the time within these discussions are happening, sometimes you get lost in between the discussions. So I think I don't know what we can do, but probably still build the capacity of the local actors to be able to present their agendas at these platforms, not only on the country teams, but even in the international platforms. Like you're given 2 seconds or 2 minutes to present your agenda, you get lost in between what to say and what not to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Ellie, over to you.
Okay, I think climate work within a refugee camp is not as easy as it does sound, mainly because these are people who are not in their own country, and some of them might not be willing to take ownership of the environment. But I think one of the key things to be done is capacity strengthening of us as local actors, and then also involve young refugees or community members in some climate summits and some climate discussions, so that they get to be aware of what is also happening out there, as we seem to be confined in one place. And financial support also ensures that the activities are well coordinated and well run, and then financial support also ensures that we have a proper reach out to the community in a more appropriate manner, and then it gives us enough time to reach out to as many people as possible. Then technical support as well is one of the other key issues, as sometimes you might not be aware of everything that is going on out there, and then being in collaboration with organizations or in connection with people, climate experts, might really help us understand the more current events, and then build up a proper intervention framework. I think taking ownership as well of ownership in design of programs, implementation, and monitoring of response intervention, as well as participating in decision making, should also really assist us increase the scope of our work. Over.
Thanks, Ellie. Key points on being part of the design program, monitoring, and not just being told this is the project to do. Jessica and Mayfuth, I would go over to you now.
Okay, I will go first, Mayfuth. Thank you for the question. I think Elijah and Ellie have said like that's really what we need. Also, maybe from me, it's like to give like the platform, and especially now we are entering in the digital era. The more exposure that we can give to the local communities, the better I think they can bring this as like one of their power to bring to the government. For example, in Indonesia, if we can bring like some of the community representatives in the national or in the global event, this is some kind of recognition from from us that we could give to them, and then this will also help them to lobbying in their local governments, like also to get the local funding to support their communities' needs, because they already have like some kind of proof that they are heard in the other platforms level. So yeah, for me, it's like more like a platform and recognition from like national and global space also. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Mayfood.
Well, the good thing when you're the last one, you can just say ditto. It's like it's a very good thing to think wherein the community would say, this is our proposal. Anybody who would like to fund it? Usually what we do is, okay, you convince them to make a proposal in line to the INGO or even the national NGOs. We have this proposal making, just like what we have, and then you come and ascribe to this. But it would be nice to have like the people in the community. That's why this clip program is very unique, because they are the ones who made it, and then you just have to guide them, help them, and and things like that. But it will be very nice if like they will come up to that platform, wherever the platform is, Jessica, and they will say, here's our proposal. Anybody who would like to fund it, we have this counterpart, we have this, this is our stake to this proposal, but who else can come it, that would be nice, right? We don't have something like that. We usually like, we want like this, like this, like this, especially for the donors. But it will be nice if they will be the one to dictate, these are our terms. I don't know what is the what looks like the elephant that you're saying, Elijah, but definitely what elephant I would like for localization is that the one who would describe that elephant would be the people from the community, because they are the ones always being hit. They are the ones who is always affected. So more or less, they also know the solutions. All we have to do is support. Well, of course, easier said than done, but hopefully we're on the right direction and getting there. That's it. Thank you very much. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mayforth. And it's true, it's quite late for you. So for both you and Jessica, so thank you very much for being with us so late and having those great points. And I think that point you made there, Mayforth, about, whatever we're defining as localization, it really does need to come from those that are affected by crises and by climate change. And in that sense, I'll do a quick wrap up, but if any of you had sort of like one last message you wanted to say in terms of local leadership and climate change, is there like in one sentence, is there something that you want people to remember that going away from today? Mayforth, please.
The more we invest with climate change, prevention and mitigation, the better we address real risks and real disasters. Now, of course, in emergency preparedness, emergency response is very important, and it should always be there. But the bigger pie that we invest in climate change, as well as in prevention and mitigation with all the different hazards, the better we will be in the next hazard that will come. So again, innovations and other ideas and strategies should always help come into place to help solve that. That's not one sentence, I'm sorry, but that's it. Thank you.
That's okay. And it was a good few sentences. Jessica, Elijah, Eli, do you have one sentence as a last wrap up for people to remember about local leadership and climate change and climate action?
Yeah, I think like as I started, unless if we build local capacities to be able to respond to climate and environment related issues, our impact of all our humanitarian interventions will have less and less impact. And in doing this, we need to work more with women and children. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Elijah. Jessica or Eli? Ellie, sorry. Jessica, do you want to go? One sentence.
Okay. I think the local communities, they know their home the best. So it's really important to include them, to ask them, and to know what they need. So we are not coming with only the interventive solution, but they need to come with what they really need, and then to show the support and then give like either financial or non-financial supports to them.
Super. Thank you very much. And Ellie, last word to you. You started off. What's one message you want us to take away?
All right. Having in mind that the local actors are the people in contact with community members, I think we should the act as a bridge between community members and international and national actors. So making the right use of them as they're the people with the contact with the community should be very helpful in designing contextual intervention.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Huge thanks to all of you. I think it's been a really incredibly rich conversation and presentations from all of you today. I think you've really emphasized the need that if we're going to be moving forward and really working well in terms of climate action and reducing the impacts of climate change, we really need to be listening to communities, going to them, understanding how they see their needs being best met. We don't know what's best for them, but we need to really work with them and trust the local and indigenous knowledge they have. And I think that emphasis on really listening and then following up in terms of what communities want and being inclusive of the diverse ages, genders, persons of different diversities that are in a community is really essential if we're going to make those critical investments that are going to have a longer term impact. I think it's also looking at sort of how do we make sure that we build on that local knowledge, but also at the same time provide the technical strengthening when necessary and capacity strengthening, and really supporting local leadership and local organizations that are working with communities. And there again, we need to be looking at how do we have longer term, more flexible funding that can get to local organizations and to community organizations, including, youth and young persons, youth groups, as well as like the RCCA in Zimbabwe. I think the point around partnership is really critical that was brought out is, if we're going to look at sustainability, we need to be thinking, how do we build those partnerships now so we've got that impact in the longer term, even if there isn't necessarily funding there. I think we've also got to be, that point about trust, I think, is critical. I think we've often come in as international organizations, but there may not be that essential trust, and really finding ways to build that will be critical as well. And then again, as you said just there again, Eli, at the end, is really involving individuals that are affected in the community in terms of designing, implementing, and monitoring programs. And even if we don't have a common understanding of what localization means, but we really need to be putting communities at the very heart of what we're doing. And then we don't need to think that every innovation is an invention, but that we just build on things that are there and really look at the different sources of knowledge that already exist and really use that in terms of moving ahead. Just before we end, I just wanted to note that we will have a recording of the event, both in video and audio only, so a podcast format, on the event page that you can see on your screens in the coming days. Huge thanks to all of you in the audience for participating, for your great questions and engagement. Thank you to our 4 fabulous panelists, and really for bringing and sharing your great examples, and for a really good conversation and really giving us some ideas that hopefully you can all take forward. Also, thanks to our captioners, Rhonda and Ellen, for providing the transcripts or the captioning for us. Thank you to Nishani, my co-facilitator, and to PHAP for making everything run very smoothly in the background. With that, huge thanks. Nishani, did you have any final words? Sorry, I was jumping ahead.
It's okay. Thank you very much. I think we have many more conversations to have on climate change and humanitarian action, and of course, looking at sustainability. We will continue the conversation and try and unpack the key commitments of the Climate and Environment Charter for humanitarian organizations in order to be able to look at how do we become more effective and efficient in the way we work, and not just look at our short-term goals, but a long-term thinking, because this is the future of our planet. And thanks so much for all our presenters, our captioners, and everyone who joined us today, and the back end of PHAP colleagues and my colleagues at ICVA for making this a success. Over.
Thank you very much. And there is a short survey, if you could take a minute or two to fill that in. It's been pasted in the chat. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening, day, rest of the morning, whatever it may be. Thank you again to our presenters for a great session. Bye, everyone.